So in my hand, I have the brand new Mizuno 923 Hot Metal, Hot Metal Pro and Hot Metal High launch. And I'm really intrigued by this new high launch model. It's time for some more in-depth head-to-head testing to see how different these heads actually perform. Welcome back to Elite Performance Golf Studios and welcome back to another in-depth head-to-head performance-based test. And today is the brand new Mizuno JPX 923 Hot Metal Pro and the one in my hand, the Hot Metal High launch, which I'm really excited about testing. And these are all going head-to-head on quad to see how they differ in terms of ball speed, launch, spin, peak height, if there's any kind of biases to the clubs, anything like that. Now, the reason that I'm so intrigued by the high launch is because I feel like it could really fill a nice gap that's been missing for a while within the offering space of kind of irons. Now, specifically what I mean by that is a larger, higher MOI head that launches higher. Because typically, the larger an iron gets, or the more forgiving an iron gets, the stronger in loft it gets. So if you're kind of a slow speed player, or if you're someone who kind of tends to take off a lot of loft, but maybe isn't the best ball striker, so want that forgiveness, you haven't really got a great option. You know, you end up going in something bigger and maybe making it weaker, something like an Apex, or maybe bending it a couple of degrees weak or something like that. But if we can have that option that just sits in that bracket, larger head, higher MOI, but gives fantastic launch and good backspin to keep that ball in the air a little bit longer, this could be amazing. So as always, going to be super in-depth, on quad, hitting loads of shots. We'll talk tech, we'll talk kind of differences in the heads, the size, the looks. I'll talk about feel, and then we'll look at the numbers at the end. Right, okay, so we're starting off with the standard hot metal model, and this, in terms of like a size-wise, it actually sits in the middle. So you've got obviously Hot Metal Pro being smallest heel to toe, smallest sole width, and least offset, and then the high launch actually being the biggest heel to toe, widest sole width, and most offset for obvious reasons. So yeah, it's gonna be really interesting just to see how these heads perform against one another, especially the Hot Metal versus the high launch. Really interested in that. And then, yeah, I probably will do some comparisons in a different video against the old model. So, you know, as always, every new model that comes out, we kind of touch on the tech. So this is like a new chromoly 4335, which they say is much stronger than the old material that they use. Therefore, the face is 8% thinner, obviously, therefore creating more ball speed across the face, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, again, it'd be interesting to test against the old model and actually see if that is the case, but oh, just picked up a shot. So yeah, as always, it's going to be hitting. I'll probably show you 5-6 shots with each. We'll talk through the looks differences down by the ball, feel, performance, all that kind of stuff as well as we go through, and then a really in-depth look at the end to see how they differ. It's a good strike. Just pulled it a wee bit. Yep. Pretty good. Wouldn't be too upset with that on this hole, flying over a massive lake at 195. So 195. Wow, 14.7 launch. That's quite low for a 7-iron. So here we've got a pin at 194. Again, it's pretty much just over a lake. The whole hole is just over a lake, which is great. I love challenging myself on these holes. So yeah, it's going to mean that straight away. Actually, it launched super low, obviously, because these are very strong in loft, while the Hot Metal and Hot Metal Pro are 28.5 degrees, which is obviously still the trend seems to be that lofts are getting stronger. I mean, they're saying that obviously we're offsetting it with deeper soles, lower and further back CG, and that's what creates the kind of higher launch. But if you deliver it like me, taking off that kind of 8 degrees, 7-8 degrees of loft and hitting 6 down, launching at 14.5. If you were a low swing speed player with that kind of delivery, which is rare, granted, but I mean, it's just never really getting up in the air whatsoever, which is where that high launch model should come in. And that could be a really, really fantastic model. I'll tell you what's actually going to be a really good head-to-head is that against the T200, They're both the same loft, 31, and the T200 launches really well. So that is going to be a very good head-to-head actually. I will do that. So that'd be a great one. A little leaky that one, but again, strike felt okay. Yeah, I wouldn't be too disappointed. Putting on this hole would be good. Left the face a little bit open, a little bit more loft on that, so therefore we saw a little bit more launch. Actually, the first two, one thing they've done well is they both spun really well, especially that first one, considering I kind of turned it over a little bit. I think there was still 6,000 backspin on that, I think. It was around that, and that was 6,800. Obviously, we'd expect that to kind of pop up a little bit, because I left the face open, therefore we delivered a little bit more loft, and it's going to spin up. But even that, from a 28.5 degree loft head, that's pretty impressive. That was, again, decent. Yeah, I mean, again, you've got to take it with a bit of a pinch of salt, the kind of stopping that this is showing us, because out in the real world, it could be baked out, it could be really soft and soggy. So, yeah, it's hard to tell. We could actually see peak height 107, descent angle 47.6. That's actually pretty nice window, to be fair. You know, the average on PGA Tour for a long time, I think it's crept up a bit now, was 100 peak with 47 descent. So 107 at 47.6 is pretty strong. But again, you know, that's the kind of numbers that I would like to see for a 7-iron 47 descent if you could get there in a fitting. But that's with me at 130 plus mile an hour ball speed, and that's what it takes to get there. So if you were an average swing speed player, where you're looking at your ball speed being down somewhere around kind of, I don't know, 110, something like that, maybe with 7-iron, it's gonna be flying so low. In terms of the looks, I'll touch on it a little bit more as we go through, because it'll be easier to compare once I've hit the others. I mean, it's not a small head by any means. I mean, they do quite a good job, Mizuno, of kind of putting a chrome back to the top line, so it kind of makes it blend a little bit more. So it doesn't look quite as big, but it's still quite a long, quite a big head, quite a bit of offset on it. So it looks very friendly, and even for me, like, I don't mind it. I wouldn't game it, obviously, but it's certainly not horrible. That was a better strike. Still maybe a touch low, but it was better. You can see by the carry on 90, yeah, stops nice and quick. Yeah, I mean, it's not, you know, I play T100S heads, and it's not, obviously not that soft. It feels good, but I wouldn't say you hit it and you go, wow, it feels super soft and amazing. I know that they've said they've put a lot of time and kind of energy and money into concentrating on launch and feel, because of the new material they've used, allowing them to have the thinner face. They've said that's pretty much given the extra ball speed that they wanted. So they concentrate a lot on the feel aspect. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. It's obviously not the best feeling iron I've ever hit, but it's nice. By the way, these have all got the exact same shaft in them, because they literally just landed today. They're still glued from the factory. I'll have to obviously pull them apart, put our fitting adapters in them and able to change shafts. But they're just the KBS S-Taper Light 95, and they're all the same, so no difference there. All obviously standard loft, standard lie as they come from Mizuno. Felt like a really good one. It's on a good line. Yeah, that was a really nice one. Like that. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty good, to be honest. Like, it's pretty balanced. I actually don't even mind those numbers for obviously something that's stronger in loft. Obviously, I'm delivering quite low loft because of that. So 22 degrees of delivered loft. We've got 16 launch. That's pretty good. 6100 spin. That's actually pretty good. Again, a nice high flight, 115 peak, 48 descent. All great. Like, yeah, like there's a gameable numbers. It's not that bad at all. But yeah, without the context of, this is why I do a lot of comparisons against other clubs and different lofts and stuff, because me just hitting this iron right now against nothing means nothing, really. Because day to day, swing can change slightly, angle of attack slightly different, delivered loft slightly different, path, face to path slightly different. All makes a big difference to numbers. That's why I like doing a lot of big head-to-heads on the same day and get good shots with both to actually see how they perform, like scientifically. None of this kind of guessing. Don't like that. I want to know. I mean, it does seem to me like it would be a little bit more of a draw bias kind of club, with that mass being lower, further back, the offset that the head's got, everything in terms of trying to get that closure rate up and make it more of a draw bias kind of club. Still don't like that word, but left bias club, I guess. Like I say, draw requires a certain set of parameters, but let's just see if we can't shape it a little bit in terms of, see if we can hit a little bit of a fade. It is a fade in, just started way too far left. Yeah, I mean, just got a little bit too out to him. Face open to the path, started left, did fade back, but just started it a little bit too far left. Right, so let's see the opposite quickly. I bet this is going to be really easy to hit a draw. Like, really easy. Probably too much of a draw. I wouldn't even call that a draw. It's like a hook. Wow. Yeah, it's certainly very easy to turn over this. Again, got the pathway inside, face just too close to the path, so it essentially started straight with a lot of left curvature. See if we can get that moving out a little bit more towards the right. Did start it a little bit further right, but I mean, it's so easy to turn over. It's gone a long way. So easy to turn over. Yeah. But all in all, looks okay, feel okay. Performance, obviously good, but hard to tell based on there's no comparison, and it would completely depend on your delivery, really, if whether it be any good for you or not. That's why reviews like this are so hard, because ultimately people with higher handicappers think I need a bigger, more forgiving iron, but when they're this strong in loft, sometimes they're really not the right thing for you. Right, so we're going into the Hot Metal Pro, and it's a noticeably nicer looking head, I'd say. This is obviously the smallest head out of the three, and when we compare it to the Hot Metal, noticeably smaller blade length, noticeably smaller top line, and noticeably less offset. So I think on the measurements on Mizuno's website, it's about 5 mil shorter heel to toe, which actually it is quite noticeable, to be honest. A lot of other irons are so similar, but that is noticeable, and it's a nicer looking head down by the ball. Obviously, the sole width is slightly smaller as well, so CG might not be as low as far back. So will we see any difference in launch conditions? I personally think it's so minimal that we won't, because the loft is the same, so the loft is going to be the number one thing in that sort of area, I would say. So this will be interesting to compare and see what happens. That felt nice. That's on a rope. Get in the hole. I think it's flown it. It's gone miles. It's a really good one, that. That felt nice, and actually, again, it's actually pretty similar to the 134 ball speed, which is pretty much what I saw out of the Hot Metal on a good one. Low launch and spin, to be fair. 14.6 launch, 57 spin. That is quite low. Yeah, did it feel much different to the Hot Metal though? No, I don't think so, to be honest. Like, so close, it's hard to say, really. Again, I didn't really feel like a great swing, if I'm honest, but the result's okay. Nice. It's good. Seems lower spin so far, I reckon, which would be really interesting if it is. It does turn out that way. So yeah, a decent sort of delivery, similar launch, less backspin. Didn't feel as crisp, which does definitely matter, especially when you're hitting off mats. Like, you'll really notice when you've been for a fitting and you hit it a tiny bit fat or like a little bit mat and ball at the same time, it rips that spin down a lot. Like, so it's definitely being conscious of that in fittings is very, very important. But yeah, I mean, it looks like a very gameable head, in all honesty. You know, it's a nice shape. It looks nice. I mean, I compare it to mine. My 7 iron, which should always be amusing because the T100S is very, very small. And yeah, okay, that's a bit of a joke. On its own, it looks absolutely fine. When you put my T100 S down, obviously noticeably a lot more loft. Mine are a little bit weaker than standard. And yeah, that is a small head, that 100S, isn't it? But yeah, for a lot of people that are used to playing bigger irons, I think that they will love the look of that, to be honest. Turned it a little bit, but catch the left edge. Seems to be going long, and I mean, I think it is the backspin. It definitely is the backspin. 53. Again, it didn't feel like the crispest of contacts, which again, like I said on the mat, can drag that spin down, but that's a few now. It's noticeably that spin dropping off. It's a good one. Yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah. Long. It's just, yeah, I think it is a little bit lower spin. Right, so is it easier not to hit this left? If that makes sense. Let's try a couple of fades, which I did struggle with a little bit, in all fairness, with the hot metal. Or you could just shank it. I mean, it's definitely a fade. Go! Oh. Came up short. Yeah, that was just a rubbish swing. Low necky heel. Actually, in all fairness, like, that was a rubbish strike. I literally felt like pretty much a shank. That still carried 180 when you compare it to the good ones that, I don't know, maybe mid 190s with that. If this hadn't been over water, that probably would have kind of got onto left edge of the green. 180 carry. It's pretty good considering I literally, that was bad. That was like, I'm not going to hit many worse strikes than that. That was bad. Yeah, even this one as well, though. It's kind of, it is really hard to hold that face open. It's a shot I struggle with anyway, but you can get the path, just can't quite get the face. Yeah, it's a bit of a fader, but not great. Right, one more with that, and then we'll see. You can definitely turn it over, I'll tell you that for sure. There we go. There we go. That could go in the hole. Go. There we go. That was better. Ball speed up 134, better strike. Yep. Let's see how much that launch pops up. Spin pops up quite a lot. Get a really high 130 feet peak height, 51 descent. That's going to stop on a dime. All right, turn it over. I don't think this is going to take many. Yep. Easy. Easy. So yeah, I mean, even this one, it would say, I mean, how much that launch and spin came down. Obviously, it wasn't quite as good a strike. You can see the strike pattern there came up the face slightly. It's going to have an influence on launch and spin. But yeah, I definitely would say, again, slightly more left side bias, harder to fade with the mass being dragged lower and further back and kind of spread across the sole for that high launch, higher MOI for giving us all those kind of ideas. But yeah, I mean, on the whole, it looks a lot better. Feel similar to me, I would think, and actually performance, if anything, it's probably longer, I reckon, but we will see. Right, so 56 shots in, so I hit about 30 with the hot metal and about 26 with the hot metal pro, and I'm not going to delete any. It's going to be very interesting to look at those numbers at the end because that surprised me kind of going through there. I expected maybe be a little bit different, but it did seem noticeable. So now into the one that really intrigues me, and that is obviously the 923 hot metal high launch. Now, obviously we've got a slightly bigger head than the hot metal in terms of heel to toe, wider sole width, and more offset. All of those things, specifically obviously the wider sole meaning more mass dragged low and far, really trying to keep that launch up. But mainly it's going to be the loft difference. As I said, it's great, you know, the CG differences in terms of kind of how the head will react, sometimes especially like closure rate, all those kind of things, and it does have some bearing on launch and spin. But loft is always going to be the number one thing when it comes to that. So they've obviously gone higher in loft. So now we're stepping up from 28.5 in the hot metal and hot metal pro to 31 in this model. So that is going to obviously be a big factor of getting that ball up in the air paired with the other things as well. Now, when we compare this and look down on the top versus the hot metal, so the hot metal high launch versus the normal hot metal, the first thing that just straight away stands out is it looks like it's got a lot more loft. Like that is just the one thing that stands out straight. It's only 2.5 degrees, but it looks noticeable. I think a little bit of that is that little bit more offset, making it look like there's a little bit more loft. And in terms of the head size, yeah, I mean, again, when you look on Mizuno's website, it says that it's the biggest head, but when compared to the hot metal, it's very marginal, only a millimeter here and there. So when you look down on it, the top line looks similar, the heel to toe looks similar. The only thing that is more noticeable is a little bit more offset and more loft for sure. Now, if I grab the Hot Metal Pro, now this again obviously will be noticeable straight away. Yeah, the Hot Metal Pro just looks like quite a bit of a smaller head, really smaller top line, smaller heel to toe, but you can still definitely notice that loft difference there. And I'll give you a little, I'll pop in a little screenshot of all three now as well, so you can see the top lines of all of them down by the ball. I mean, they all look really good, to be honest. Like I said, the Hot Metal Pro is obviously going to appeal to a lot of people. Especially, I mean, I guess it's going to be a really good one for the people that are kind of scoopers, right? I see a lot of people that are very shallow. A shallow angle of attack will always be paired with delivering more loft at the ball. So something like this that looks like a very attractive head, down by the ball, it looks very nice, but it's very strong in loft, being 28.5 degrees. It's going to be great for that kind of, that scooper. Right, first hit with the Hot Metal High Launcher. See how we get on. Holy cow. Holy cow. Go in the hole. That honestly wasn't even a particularly good strike, in all honesty. We can see that the ball speed's come down to 19. The launch is at 19, I was just reading there, sorry. Ball speed come down to 130, where I know my better strikes are close to 134. Wow. Wow, that's gone high. Yeah, 123 feet in the air, that's high. Tell you what, even just from that one hit, this could be a game changer this year. Like this whole range of JPX 923 actually, for me, serves far more of a purpose than the MP range, the Mizuno Pro range. That's going to sound very, I don't know. It's going to sound very much like I'm slating the MP, and I'm not. They're fantastic clubs, but they kind of sit alongside other stuff, like 225, P790, very similar. Also very similar to the Forge Tech. Like, they're all perform very similar. Like, the Mizuno Pro 223 performs very similar to the 100S. And obviously, we've got the 221 performing similar to other kind of MB, Callaway MB. Probably not the P7 MB, because that spins a lot. But, you know, they're all got kind of direct competitors for me, being brand agnostic. They all perform similarly to something else, whereas this, if you can have something that gives a bigger footprint, therefore gives you more confidence, a little bit more loft, with the CZ really low and far back, all pairing up to give you something that is more forgiving and really gets the ball up in the air. That has a massive purpose. And the same as the Pro, being not a really big head, like a nice looking head, but much stronger in loft. They're going to be for that better player who delivers too much loft. Still looks nice, but really helps get that ball flight down. So these two heads could have a massively good purpose in the fitting bay. Holy bejesus. That actually felt a little bit low in the face as well. It's just the trajectory difference is just massive. Massive. So the interesting thing is going to be the trade-off in distance, right? Which, again, for me, it's always a battle against kind of some people in the bay. If I'm trying to get the height up, generally we need more loft to do so. More loft typically would equate to less carry, again, for some people. So for this kind of experiment, obviously we're down by, was it 28.5 to 31, so 2.5 degrees. That's half a club-ish, so I would expect half a club-ish of drop-off anyway, but if we're getting more backspin, that kind of creates more of a climb. The backspin is going to create more climb to the flight, which again is going to lose a little bit of distance. So it'll be interesting to see how much distance we do actually lose when compared to the other models. But again, for some people, it's irrelevant. Like getting the peak up and getting the descent angle steeper to give you more control coming into greens is paramount, really. So losing distance to gain control sometimes. Again, that strike felt pretty decent, to be honest. I mean, it's just the difference in ball flight is just staggering. Staggering. Yeah, it's a good strike. I mean, that's pretty much where we kind of want to be striking it. I mean, maybe a couple of mil low if I was being critical, but it's good. 18 launch, 66 backspin, 187 carry, 122 foot peak in the air. I mean, ball flight is so different. That felt good. Yeah, like, obviously touched on sound and feel and everything like that. Not much, really not much. I haven't noticed anything different, sound, feel, really, going through whatsoever. So I'd say they're all pretty similar. It's just, just the looks that we've touched on, really. Right, see if we can hit a cut with this one. I think this one will be, in theory, one of the hardest ones to cut, but let's see. Pretty much the same as the others, really. On the first one I hit, it's a little bit of a cut. It's definitely noticeably shorter, this iron. Yeah, got it out to in. Couldn't quite get the face open. One more go. It doesn't want to go. Does not want to go. Can't do it. All right, fade. Should be pretty damn easy. Pretty damn easy. Too much of one, but again, they were all kind of similar, to be honest, in that field, I guess. That they were very, very, very easy to draw. Again, that is my shot. It's going to be easier for me to do that. But even with that, I mean, if you look at the launch and spin compared to some of the others, when I hit draws with the others, I think they were down like 14 launch, 15 launch maybe. Definitely into the 5s at spin. That launched at 17 and spun at 6,000. Like, that's still very impressive for that, how much of a strong kind of draw shape. Oh, baby. Yep, she wants to go left. Even then, that's impressive. Let's try and figure that out quickly. So we don't want that last one in there. So what shot would that have been? 74. So last one would have been 74. So 74, 73, 72, 71, 70. It's now 68. 68, 73. All right, see if we can aim right and actually hit a real big slinging draw and see what the launch and spin's like on that. Yeah, that's a slinging draw. That yardage up. I mean, the launch came up. I mean, that, to be fair, that's just more me though. So you can instantly see that how me changing my delivery affected the outcome of that in terms of launch and spin. I got way more shallow because I was really trying to come from the inside, which is obviously going to create the kind of more shallow angle of attack. So you see I was a 0.9 down there when I hit a normal one on 5, 6, 7 down. So it created high launch, low backspin. I know it was a bit of a rake-in draw. It's going to drop the backspin as well. But 19 launch, 5,300 backspin. Really different launch conditions from a very, very different delivery. Right, so yeah, I mean, I'm very, very intrigued to look at these numbers. I'm still going to hit a few more with this yet. I only shot 75. Maybe hit another 10 with this high launch. And then, yeah, can't wait to dive into these numbers. Right, so jumping into the performance data, ball flight. Yeah, I mean, the high launch. Yeah, did very, very well, very noticeably different. I know there's a loft difference there of 2.5 degrees. Typically, we would expect to see maybe around 1.5 degrees of launch difference because of that loft difference statically. Actually, we saw really 15 in the Hot Metal Pro going up to almost 18. So 2.5 to 3 degrees of loft launch increase between the Hot Metal Pro and the Hot Metal High Launch. Now that is impressive. That's really good. Again, I'm going to pair that up against the T200, the Hot Metal High Launch. So that can be a really good head-to-head. Overall, we saw Hot Metal at the top, Hot Metal Pro, and then the High Launch. So the Hot Metal and the Hot Metal Pro, very similar ball speeds. Wouldn't expect to see anything too different. Again, very similar head designs. Obviously, I know the Hot Metal Pro is smaller profile overall, but in terms of the loft, the materials, all that sort of thing, very similar. So wouldn't expect to see a ball speed difference there. With the Hot Metal High Launch, obviously it's got less, more loft. So more loft is going to create less efficiency typically. And then with it being the high launch model, obviously we saw it launch higher. So there's going to be a reason it launched higher. So therefore there would have been even more delivered dynamic loft probably. So we'll have a look at that in a minute. But more delivered dynamic loft, again, going to equate to slightly less ball speed. So no wonder we saw a little bit of a drop off there. Makes perfect sense. So a little bit less ball speed there. Like I said, the launch, we did see the Hot Metal Pro launch and spin the lowest, which did surprise me. I guess thinking about it logically, it does make sense, really, with it being the same loft as the Hot Metal, but a slightly kind of narrower front to back. So CG probably a little bit closer to the face. That makes sense. But we did see it launch and spin a little bit lower, 15 and 57 versus 15.5 and 61. And again, that's good spin actually from that kind of head design, big, chunky head, kind of very strong in loft. It did do a very, very good job of retaining spin there, to be fair, which is nice. And then we see kind of carry distances of the Hot Metal Pro being the longest. Again, lots of ball speed, lowest launch, lowest spin. So the lowest spin is going to create a longer carry. Middle being the Hot Metal, and then the High Launch being the lowest, which again, least ball speed, most launch, most spin. It's going to give us the least carry, or me anyway. Not necessarily if you're a lower swing speed player, possibly that would gain you carry. But yeah, it's kind of what we expected. I mean, loft, really, we're going to expect half a club drop off of the High Launch with it being weaker in loft, which it did against the Hot Metal Pro. Sorry, the Hot Metal. There's definitely too many Hot Metals and Hot Metal Pros and Hot Metal Pro High Launch, and too much Mizuno, confusing me. But yeah, it's a little bit weaker, so we're going to expect a drop off versus the others. But the main point from that is that High Launch did really well. And again, as I mentioned in the kind of hitting earlier, that Hot Metal Pro could be a great one for someone who actually wants to see a nice-ish looking club down by the ball, but needs lower launch, lower spin because they deliver a little bit too much loft to impact. So that's two really, really good heads in the fitting bay, that. Right, so jumping into the club data page, and obviously the first thing that we're going to notice straight away, or what I want to look at, is that dynamic loft. So there we go, we can see that difference there. 3 degrees between the Hot Metal Pro and the Hot Metal High Launch, hence why we're seeing that much higher launch angle. So on average, the strike was pretty much the same, which is great. But yeah, two degrees difference between the Hot Metal and the Hot Metal High Launch. I actually expected to see maybe a touch more there between those two, but there you go. Again, it's just going to show that that head is doing a really, really good job of kind of getting that ball up in the air. But similar to what I would expect, you know, seeing that 3 degrees more between the Hot Metal Pro and the Hot Metal High Launch. Efficiency, obviously, we know that the Hot Metal High Launch was going to be down because of less ball speed. Probably a lot to do with that more delivered dynamic loft. Swing speed was the same though. Delivery was pretty much the same. Path, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say that's anything to do with the club. Yeah, the face angle again makes perfect sense. The high launch being the most closed, then the hot metal, then the hot metal pro. The high launch I found easy to turn over. The hot metal again slightly easy to turn over, and then the straight is probably the hot metal pro. Less offset, smallest head, CG closer to the face, therefore less kind of hard to turn over. Makes perfect sense. One thing that did stick out was that dynamic lie actually being more toe down with the high launch, even though it's actually the same lie angle. Again, that could be to do with the mass being pulled lower and further back, therefore it's creating more kind of downward deflection, kind of getting that toe more down at impact, which would actually make more sense. But again, on the whole, you would just kind of weigh that up in a fitting and say, okay, the toe's more down, maybe we want more of an upright lie angle, again, depending on the miss and stuff like that as well. So weighing all that up. But yeah, on the whole, you know, average strike pretty similar. Really, the difference is just that dynamic loft, which is great. Exactly what we want to see, exactly why we're really seeing those different launch conditions and why the heads are performing the way they're performing, which is absolutely fantastic. So let's sum up. Right, so there we go. Another in-depth test done. Super waffly, super in-depth. I'm sorry, but I'm sure all the golf nerds out there will love it like me. But yeah, honestly, 3 really, really good irons from Mizuno. Again, I'd love to do head-to-heads against the old ones. I really want to do, or will do, head-to-heads against other things, like I said, like T200. That sort of thing would be really good for the high launch. In terms of the other ones, kind of Cobra Forge Tech X, possibly. It's marginally stronger in loft, but it's that kind of category of very strong lofted players distance kind of irons. So I really want to do more head-to-heads, because doing it like this is great, but actually putting it head-to-head against something that is kind of in a similar category is really like what I enjoy doing, and seeing if there is any differences there. But yeah, I mean, that high launch, what a great addition, honestly, from Mizuno. Like, massive thumbs up from me for that. Like, we've been after something like that for a while. Bigger footprint, more offset, but higher in loft than your average strong lofted game improvement kind of iron, and does launch and spin very well. So amazing. Really going to be good in the fitting bay that this year. And again, with the Hot Metal Pro being that nice looking head, but much stronger in loft. Again, really good for your kind of slightly better players that deliver more loft, that want to see a nice club behind the ball. Again, fantastic, really good options there. Looks wise, great. Feel wise, I mean, I would say they're lovely. I mean, they didn't stand out as like, oh, nothing feels like a Mizuno, like buttery soft, but the JPX have never really been that way, I'd say, when compared to the MP, but they still feel good. They feel solid. Nothing put me off there either. So yeah, really impressed. Really good. Like I say, can't wait to do some more in-depth testing with these against some other products. So please stay tuned for that. Make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.